We spend our lives trying to make sense of things, trying to control outcomes, and striving to shape our future according to our limited understanding. But what if I told you that God's plan is beyond your imagination, that the very control you cling to is the source of your suffering? Life, like a river, flows effortlessly toward its purpose, yet we resist, we struggle, we fear the unknown. But what if the unknown is precisely where God's greatest gifts are hidden? What if what appears to be chaos is actually divine order in disguise? We live bound by time, impatient for answers, restless for change, but God's timing is eternal. He weaves the past, present, and future together in ways we cannot yet comprehend. And the moment we surrender, when we stop trying to force the puzzle pieces to fit, something miraculous happens. We align with the divine flow. We begin to see that every detour, every delay, every uncertainty is part of a greater masterpiece beyond anything we could have ever imagined. We spend our lives trying to make sense of things, trying to control outcomes, and striving to shape our future according to our limited understanding. But what if I told you that God's plan is beyond your imagination? That the very control you cling to is the source of your suffering? Life, like a river, flows effortlessly toward its purpose, yet we resist, we struggle, we fear the unknown. But what if the unknown is precisely where God's greatest gifts are hidden? What if what appears to be chaos is actually divine order in disguise? We live bound by time, impatient for answers, restless for change, but God's timing is eternal. He weaves the past, present, and future together in ways we cannot yet comprehend, and the moment we surrender, when we stop trying to force the puzzle pieces to fit, something miraculous happens. We align with the divine flow. We begin to see that every detour, every delay, every uncertainty is part of a greater masterpiece beyond anything we could have ever imagined. We live under the illusion that we must take control of life, as if we are separate from the great cosmic dance of creation. We plan, we strategize, we convince ourselves that we know what's best, and yet how many times have you looked back and realized that what you once thought was a setback was actually a setup for something greater? How many times have you clung to a dream, only for it to slip through your fingers, only to later understand that something far more beautiful was waiting for you? God's plan is not something you can grasp with your intellect alone. It is not a roadmap with clear signs and predictable directions. It is something that unfolds moment by moment in ways too intricate and vast for the human mind to comprehend. We suffer because we resist this. We suffer because we demand explanations, clarity, and certainty. But what if life is not meant to be figured out? What if life is meant to be experienced with faith, with trust, with the deep knowing that something far greater than yourself is at work? Look at the trees, how they grow without strain. The flowers bloom without effort. The rivers do not struggle to reach the ocean. All of nature moves in harmony with a divine intelligence, an intelligence that orchestrates the rising of the sun, the changing of the seasons, the birth of new life. And yet, as human beings, we think we must fight against this flow. We think we must force our way through life, that we must have all the answers. But perhaps the greatest wisdom is not in trying to control life, but in surrendering to it. This surrender is not a sign of weakness. It is not resignation. It is the deepest trust in God's plan, a plan so vast, so profound, that if you could see it all at once, it would leave you breathless. When things don't go as you hoped, when doors close, when life takes an unexpected turn, what if, instead of resisting, you asked yourself, what if this is happening for me, not to me? What if every perceived failure is actually an act of divine redirection? Imagine a child who builds a sandcastle at the edge of the shore, only for the waves to come and wash it away. The child may cry, believing that all is lost. But what the child does not see is that the ocean has infinite sand, infinite possibilities, and that with time, an even greater castle can be built. This is how we often experience life. We mourn the loss of things that were never meant to last, never meant to be permanent, all while God is preparing something far greater just beyond our view. Faith is not about knowing every step ahead. It is about taking one step at a time, even when you do not see the whole staircase. It is about trusting that, though the path may twist and turn, it is leading you exactly where you are meant to be. It is about realizing that the plans you make, the dreams you chase, are often mere shadows of the far greater reality God has in store for you. There is a freedom that comes when you let go of the need to control. When you stop trying to force life to fit your expectations, you open yourself to something much grander than you ever imagined. You begin to see that everything, every heartbreak, every detour, every unanswered prayer, is part of a divine masterpiece. You were never meant to carry the weight of the world on your shoulders. You were meant to trust, to surrender, to let go, and allow the divine intelligence that created the stars, the galaxies, the entire universe to lead you. God's plan is not something you need to understand. It is something you must allow to unfold. Like the waves of the ocean, like the wind through the trees, like the seasons that change effortlessly, trust that your life too is unfolding exactly as it should, not in accordance with your limited vision, but with a divine purpose beyond anything you could ever imagine. Life, like a river, moves effortlessly toward its destination. It does not question where it is going, nor does it resist the twists and turns of the landscape. It simply flows, allowing gravity and the natural course of things to guide its way. Yet as human beings we struggle. We fight against the current, convinced that we must direct every detail of our journey. We fear what we do not understand, believing that if we could only control the future, we would find peace. But true peace does not come from control. It comes from trust. Trust in the divine intelligence that weaves all things together in ways beyond our comprehension. We often make the mistake of thinking that life should be a straight line from where we are to where we want to be. But God does not work in straight lines. He moves in spirals, in cycles, in patterns too vast for the human mind to grasp. We see only a fragment of the picture, a single brushstroke on a canvas so large that it stretches beyond time itself. And yet, in our limited perception, we judge what is good and what is bad. We call delays failures. We call unexpected changes obstacles. But what if what you see as a detour is actually the shortest path to exactly where you need to be? What if the doors that close are not rejections, but divine redirections? Think of a seed buried in the soil. If it had consciousness, it might think it had been cast into darkness, forgotten, abandoned beneath the earth. But in reality, that darkness is the very thing that allows it to grow. The seed must break apart before it can become what it was meant to be. And so it is with us. We resist the breaking, we resist the uncertainty, not realizing that every trial is preparing us for something far greater. Just as the seed must surrender to the process of growth, we must surrender to the divine unfolding of our lives. We often assume that we know what is best for us, but how many times have you wanted something desperately, only to look back years later and realize that not getting it was the greatest blessing? How many times have you prayed for something, convinced that it would bring you happiness, only to later understand that God was protecting you from your own limited desires? We do not see the whole picture. We do not understand the intricate weaving of time and destiny. And yet we resist. We try to force our own way instead of allowing ourselves to be carried by the current of something far greater than our own understanding. There is a divine rhythm to life, a natural harmony that exists whether we acknowledge it or not. The sun rises and sets without effort. The tides move with perfect precision. The planets orbit in a delicate balance that has existed for billions of years. This same intelligence that governs the universe is at work in your life. When you trust in it, when you let go of the need to control, you begin to see that everything is happening exactly as it should. Even the struggles, even the pain, even the moments of deep uncertainty, all of it is part of a masterpiece that is unfolding in ways beyond your imagination. The key is not to force life to conform to your expectations, but to align yourself with the divine flow, to step into the unknown with faith, knowing that God's plan for you is not random, not accidental, but perfectly designed. It is not always easy to trust in what we cannot see, but that is where true faith begins. Faith is walking forward even when the path is unclear. Faith is understanding that delays are not denials, that endings are often beginnings in disguise, and that every moment, even those that seem chaotic, are part of a greater divine order. When you surrender to this truth, life becomes lighter. You stop fighting against what is. You stop resisting change. You stop living in fear of the unknown. Instead, you open yourself to the infinite possibilities that exist beyond your imagination. You begin to see that what you once called obstacles were actually stepping stones, guiding you towards something greater than you could have planned for yourself. And in that realization, you find freedom. The freedom to trust, to let go, and to embrace the divine unfolding of your life with an open heart. We fear uncertainty because we believe that only what we can predict is safe. We spend so much time trying to map out our futures, trying to ensure that every step we take is part of a logical plan. But God's plan is not bound by human logic. It does not adhere to our expectations or fit neatly into our timelines. And yet, when we look back on our lives, we often find that the most beautiful, transformative moments were never the ones we planned. They were the surprises, the unanticipated turns, the situations that seemed confusing at the time, but later revealed themselves to be perfectly orchestrated. Life moves in ways we cannot foresee, and that is where faith is required. Faith is not just believing in God when things are clear and predictable. It is trusting Him when nothing makes sense. It is walking forward even when you cannot see the next step. It is understanding that what feels like uncertainty to you is perfect clarity to God. He is not bound by time the way we are. We see only this moment, but He sees the entire picture. Every setback, every delay, every seeming disappointment is part of something so much greater than what we can comprehend. We often mistake comfort for security. We cling to what is familiar, even when it no longer serves us, because stepping into the unknown feels terrifying. But growth does not happen in comfort. A butterfly does not emerge without first being confined in the darkness of a cocoon. A baby does not take its first steps without first stumbling. And a soul does not awaken without first being shaken. The moments in life that feel uncertain, that challenge us and push us beyond our limits, are the moments that transform us. They are not punishments, they are preparations. But we resist, we fight against the flow of life, convinced that our plans are better than God's. We grow impatient, asking why things are not happening the way we expected, but impatience is simply the refusal to trust in divine timing. We are like children tugging at a seedling, demanding that it grow faster, not realizing that everything is happening exactly as it should. The seed will sprout when the time is right. The flower will bloom in its season, and our lives will unfold according to a timing far more perfect than our own. Surrendering to this truth does not mean giving up on your dreams or becoming passive. It means recognizing that your efforts alone are not what create your destiny. It means moving forward with intention, but releasing the outcome. It means understanding that God's plan will always be greater than your own, even when it does not look the way you expected. A detour is not a mistake. A closed door is not a failure. They are simply the ways in which God redirects us towards something better. Think of a person lost in a maze. From the ground, the walls seem endless, the path confusing. But if you were to rise above it, if you could see from a higher perspective, you would see that there is always a way forward. God has that higher perspective. He sees what you cannot. And when you trust in Him, you do not need to see every turn in advance. You simply take one step at a time, knowing that you are being guided. There is a peace that comes when you release the need to understand everything, when you stop struggling against what is and instead open yourself to what could be. You begin to see that life is not something happening to you, but something happening for you. Every experience, every challenge, every moment of uncertainty is shaping you, preparing you, refining you. And when you embrace this truth, fear loses its power. You no longer need to control everything, you simply trust. You trust that the same God who set the stars in motion, who created the vastness of the universe, is also guiding your steps. And that realization is the key to true freedom. We fear the unknown because we believe we must always have a clear destination, a well-marked path, and a sense of certainty about where life is taking us. But if you look closely, the most profound moments of growth, the most beautiful transformations, have never come from knowing exactly what comes next. They arise when you step into the unknown, when you let go of rigid expectations and allow something far greater than yourself to unfold. God's plan is not something you grasp with your intellect alone. It is something you experience, something you trust, something that reveals itself only when you surrender to it. Yet we resist. We try to force life to conform to our desires. We cling to our carefully crafted timelines, convinced that if things do not go according to plan, something must be wrong. But what if the disruptions, the delays, the unexpected twists and turns are not obstacles, but invitations? What if they are divine interventions, guiding you towards something beyond your imagination? Consider all the times in your life when you thought you had lost something valuable, only to later realize that it was never meant for you in the first place. Think about the moments when things fell apart, only to make space for something greater to emerge. God does not operate on human schedules. He is not limited by our sense of time or urgency. While we grow impatient, demanding immediate results, God is weaving something far more intricate than we can perceive. A tapestry cannot be seen in its fullness when you are standing too close. You see only a single thread, tangled and chaotic, but step back, gain perspective, and suddenly the pattern reveals itself. The delays, the detours, the waiting. It is all part of something vast and magnificent. What seems like a standstill is often divine preparation. Imagine a caterpillar struggling inside its cocoon, longing to break free, unaware that the process of waiting is what gives it the strength to become a butterfly. If it were to force its way out too soon, it would never develop the wings it needs to fly. And yet we do the same in our own lives. We want to rush the process, escape the discomfort, push forward before the time is right. But growth requires patience. Transformation requires trust. And trusting in God's plan means understanding that things will unfold exactly when they are meant to, not a moment too soon or too late. We often look for signs, for reassurance, for proof that everything is going to be okay. But true faith is not about having proof. It is about believing even when you cannot yet see. A seed does not doubt whether it will grow when it is buried in the soil. It simply allows itself to be nurtured, trusting that the sun will rise, the rain will fall, and in time it will break through the earth. That is the kind of trust we are called to have. A trust that does not waver in uncertainty. A trust that does not demand immediate answers. A trust that knows, beyond logic, that what is meant for you will always find you. The mind will try to analyze, to predict, to control, but God's plan is not something you can control. It is something you can align with, something you can open yourself to, something you can move in harmony with instead of resisting. And when you do, when you surrender to the divine flow of life, something extraordinary happens. Fear begins to dissolve. Anxiety loses its grip. You no longer feel the need to force outcomes because you understand that everything is already in motion. Look at the world around you, the way the waves meet the shore without effort, the way the stars move in perfect harmony, the way the seasons change without hesitation. There is an intelligence, a design, a rhythm to all things, and that same intelligence is guiding you. The more you trust in it, the more you let go of the need to control, the more you will see that your life is unfolding with precision, beauty, and grace, even in uncertainty, even in the waiting, even in the moments that do not make sense, because God's plan is always greater than anything you could have imagined. We spend so much of our lives searching for certainty, for solid ground beneath our feet, for a sense of control over what is to come. But life is not something to be controlled. It is something to be lived, to be experienced, to be surrendered to. The more we try to grasp it, the more it slips through our fingers. We chase after security, after guarantees, after assurances that everything will go according to our plan. But whose plan are we following? Our own limited vision or the vast and infinite design of God? God's plan does not fit into the narrow lines of human expectation. It is far too grand, too deep, too profound to be reduced to a checklist of things we think should happen, and yet we resist. We fight against the unknown, convinced that if we do not see the full path ahead, we must be lost. But what if not knowing is part of the plan? What if uncertainty is not a sign that something has gone wrong, but a sign that something is about to unfold in a way far greater than you could ever predict? Think of a traveler walking through dense fog. He can only see a few steps in front of him. If he panics, if he refuses to move until the entire path is revealed, he will remain stuck. But if he trusts, if he takes each step with faith, the path reveals itself as he goes. That is how God's plan works. You are not meant to see the entire journey at once. You are only meant to take the next step, and then the next, trusting that you are being led exactly where you need to go. So often we pray for clarity, for immediate answers, for signs that we are on the right path. But faith is not about seeing, it is about trusting, even when you cannot see. The trees do not question the seasons. They do not panic when their leaves fall, fearing they will never bloom again. They simply allow the cycle to unfold, knowing that new life will come in its time. In the same way, we are called to trust that every ending in our lives is making space for a new beginning. Every loss, every change, every unanswered question is not a punishment, but a preparation. We may not always understand why things happen the way they do, but that does not mean they are without purpose. Sometimes, what feels like rejection is actually divine protection. Sometimes, what seems like a delay is actually God's way of aligning things in perfect timing. How many times have you looked back and realized that what you once saw as a failure was actually a necessary step towards something greater? How many times have you been grateful for unanswered prayers, for doors that closed, for things that did not work out the way you originally hoped? If we only trust when things go our way, then that is not faith, it is merely convenience. True faith is trusting even when the road is unclear, even when life feels uncertain, even when you do not have all the answers. It is knowing that there is a divine intelligence at work, orchestrating something far beyond your understanding. The universe is not random. Life is not accidental. Every moment, every experience, every challenge is connected, woven together into a story so intricate, so perfect, that if you could see it all at once, it would take your breath away. So let go of the need to control. Release the fear of the unknown. Step forward with trust, knowing that you are not alone. The same force that guides the stars, that brings the tides to the shore, that orchestrates the rise and fall of all things, is guiding you. And when you surrender to that, when you allow yourself to flow with the divine rather than fight against it, you will come to see that everything is happening exactly as it should, not according to your plan, but according to a plan far greater than anything you could ever imagine.
There comes a moment, subtle yet seismic, when everything around you seems unchanged, yet within, a stirring begins. You feel it not in your mind, but in your being, a shift. You cannot explain it logically, and yet it feels more real than anything you've ever known. This, dear listener, is the whisper of the divine reminding you that you are God's chosen one. But let us be clear, this is not the mark of privilege, it is the call to presence. To be chosen is not to be exalted above others, but to be awakened to the mystery that you are not separate from the source. And the shift that is coming, it is not from heaven to earth, but from illusion to truth within you. You were never meant to simply believe in God. You were meant to realize God as the very pulse of your existence. So prepare, not by striving, but by surrendering, not by doing more, but by becoming less so that Spirit may become more in you. The world around you may remain asleep, but the shift begins the moment you wake up. To be chosen by God is not what many imagine it to be. It is not the applause of heaven crashing upon your name, nor is it the guarantee of an easy road, paved with miracles and clarity. Rather, it is a quiet calling, like the hush of wind through the trees, inviting you into a deeper mystery. You are not chosen because you are better, holier, or more deserving than others. You are chosen because you were ready, perhaps not consciously but at the soul level, to awaken. And awakening is not a reward, it is a responsibility. The paradox of being chosen is that it humbles you before it elevates you. It strips away all false identities before it clothes you in truth. The ego wants to wear the title like a crown. It wants to be the hero of the divine story, but in the eyes of the eternal, to be chosen is not to be the hero. It is to be the hollow flute through which God plays his music. And yet, in becoming empty, you become full, full of presence, full of grace, full of something that cannot be named, only felt. You begin to realize that being chosen has nothing to do with destiny in the worldly sense. It is not about achievements or acclaim. It is about alignment. You are chosen when your life, willingly or painfully, bends toward the flow of divine will. And in that bending there is breaking, not as punishment, but as preparation. For how can new wine be poured into an old wineskin? You may find that everything you once trusted begins to dissolve. Your plans, your ambitions, your sense of self. At first it feels like loss, but soon you see it is liberation. To be chosen is to be invited out of illusion and into presence. It is to realize that God has never been out there, God has been in here all along, in the breath, in the silence, in the stillness between thoughts. And so the paradox deepens. You are chosen not to stand apart from others, but to see that there are no others. The shift you undergo reveals the sacred in all things, even in suffering, even in confusion, especially in those. This calling, this choosing, is not always loud. It is not always comfortable, but it is always true. And once you hear it, you cannot unhear it. Something inside you remembers. Something inside you agrees. Not with your words, but with your surrender. The chosen one does not walk with certainty, but with trust. Not with superiority, but with compassion. You carry the light not to dazzle the world, but to remind the world of its own light. This is what it means to be chosen, not exalted, but emptied, not lifted above, but lowered into the heart of all things. And from that sacred stillness a shift begins, not just in you, but through you. A spiritual shift is often misunderstood. Many wait for it as though it will descend from the skies, arrive with thunder, or appear like a sign written in the clouds. But the truth is more subtle and more profound. The shift does not come from the outside in. It comes from the inside out. It does not arrive with spectacle, but with stillness. It begins quietly, like a whisper in the soul, calling you home to yourself. This shift is not about acquiring something new. It is about remembering something ancient. You begin to feel that life as you knew it, with its attachments and distractions, no longer satisfies the deeper yearning within you. The usual pleasures feel shallow. The noise of the world starts to grate against your spirit, and something begins to ache, not with pain, but with a longing to be whole. That ache is sacred. It is the seed of transformation. You may not be able to name what is happening. You may not even be able to explain it to others. But deep within, you know, something is changing. You are not who you were, and you cannot go back. The things you once chased begin to fall away. The identities you clung to begin to loosen. And slowly, you begin to see that the shift is not happening to you. It is happening through you. This change is not about becoming better, but about becoming real. It is not about striving upward, but sinking inward. You are being called to dwell in the present moment, not as an escape from the world, but as a way of seeing it clearly. When you become still, when you stop fighting to fix or force things, you begin to sense the pulse of the divine that has been guiding you all along. You begin to trust not the outer world, but the inner voice. That voice, subtle as it may be, is the current of spirit drawing you back to alignment. And as the shift deepens, something remarkable happens. You realize that the world hasn't changed, but your way of seeing it has. You see meaning in places you once overlooked. You hear God in silence, feel grace in stillness, and sense purpose in the very breath you breathe. The same sky above you is now laced with awe. The same people around you now reflect back fragments of the divine. Nothing has changed, and yet everything has. This is the essence of the shift, not a new doctrine, not a new identity, but a new perception. It is not external revolution, but internal evolution. And the moment you recognize that the change is already stirring within you, you stop waiting. You start preparing, not by doing more, but by being more present, not by reaching outward, but by turning inward. The shift is not coming. It is already here. It's been here, waiting for you to awaken to it. And once you do, life is never the same again. Letting go is one of the most misunderstood aspects of spiritual transformation. The human mind, conditioned by fear and control, wants to cling to ideas, to identities, to relationships, to plans. It believes that by holding on tightly it can stay safe, stay certain, stay in control. But in the spiritual journey, the very opposite is true. What looks like surrender to the mind is actually liberation to the soul. Letting go is not a loss, it is the beginning of divine alignment. To receive what God has for you, you must first release what you are not meant to carry. This is not a passive resignation, but a sacred participation in the unfolding of divine will. You are not giving up. You are opening up. You are not abandoning effort. You are trusting presence, and in that trust you make room for the mysterious, the miraculous, the movement of spirit. So much of our suffering comes not from life itself, but from our resistance to it. We grip tightly to outcomes, to stories, to roles we think define us. But the truth is, the more tightly we hold, the more we cut ourselves off from grace. Letting go is not about detachment in the cold sense. It is about softening into faith. It is about realizing that you do not need to orchestrate every detail, that the divine is already at work in the unseen, guiding every step you take. When you begin to let go, truly let go, you start to notice the subtle wisdom of surrender. The weight of worry begins to lift. The fog of confusion begins to clear. You begin to hear again, not just with your ears, but with your soul. You hear the quiet voice within that was always there, waiting for space to speak. That voice does not shout. It does not demand. It whispers, and it leads you not by force, but by resonance. You feel its truth, and you follow not because you must, but because you know. Letting go is not a one-time act. It is a posture of living. It is waking up each day with open hands and a soft heart, saying, "Not my will, but yours." It is choosing trust over control, presence over anxiety, flow over resistance. It is understanding that the river of life carries you more surely than any plan you could devise. And in this letting go, something miraculous occurs. Space is created for joy, for clarity, for divine instruction. What you thought you needed, you no longer crave. What once defined you no longer binds you. You become light. You become available. You become ready. The irony, of course, is that when you finally let go, you receive more than you ever imagined. Not always in the form you expected, but in the essence your soul truly needed. This is the great reversal of spiritual life. The less you hold on, the more you are held. In the eyes of the world, everything appears separate. You are you, and I am me. The tree is not the sky. The river is not the mountain. We are taught from a young age to divide, to categorize, to measure difference. But to the awakened soul, this separation is an illusion, a necessary one, perhaps, for navigating material life, but still a veil covering the deeper truth. And the chosen, those attuned to the spiritual shift, begin to see through this veil. They begin to recognize what has always been, that we are not separate at all, but profoundly, irrevocably one. This is not a poetic sentiment, it is a lived experience. The more you awaken, the more your perception changes. Where once you saw opposition, you begin to see reflection. Where once you felt threatened by others, you begin to feel connected. And in the quiet places of your heart, you start to understand what Jesus meant when he prayed, that they may all be one, as you, Father, are in me, and I in you. This oneness is not an ideal to strive for, it is the ground of your being. The shift reveals that your neighbor is not your rival, but your mirror, that the stranger is not the other, but the unrecognized part of yourself, that the suffering in the world is not distant, but intimately your own. It is only when the ego dies, when the illusion of separateness dissolves, that compassion is born, not the kind of compassion that pities from above, but the kind that kneels beside, that weeps with, that embraces as kin. To see oneness in a divided world is to live with an open heart. It is to feel both the beauty and the sorrow of life more deeply. You begin to understand that no one suffers alone, just as no one loves alone. Everything is connected. Every thought ripples. Every action echoes. The light you bring to your own inner world touches far more than you can see. And so, being chosen is not about standing apart from the world, but about sinking more deeply into it. Not as it appears, but as it truly is. You don't escape the world, you embrace it with new eyes. You begin to see the divine thread weaving through all things, even in places of darkness. You stop asking why them, or why me, and begin to realize that there is no them, there is only us. In this sacred understanding, fear loses its grip. Because how can you fear what you recognize as yourself? How can you hate what you now see as holy? The chosen are not chosen to dominate or to isolate. They are chosen to remember, and in remembering, to remind others. You are not alone, because you never have been. There is no separation, only seeming, and once you see that, the whole world begins to shine from the inside out. To be chosen is not to sit and wait for a miracle to arrive. It is to rise and become the miracle. The call is not passive. It does not invite you to simply believe, but to embody. This is where many misunderstand the nature of divine purpose. They look to the heavens for a sign, for confirmation, for a breakthrough, while ignoring the quiet truth that they themselves have been marked to carry the light, to walk with purpose, to be the shift they seek. You were not chosen to observe change from afar, but to initiate it by your very presence. God does not call spectators. He calls vessels, ones willing to be emptied of ego, fear, and doubt, so that something greater can move through them. Your life, your voice, your hands, these are not incidental. They are sacred instruments, and when you surrender them in love, you become an extension of the divine, not merely waiting for purpose, but expressing it. Many are tired. They wait year after year, hoping for God to do something dramatic. But here is the deeper truth God already has. He called you. The moment you became aware of this inner stirring, this holy unrest, you stepped into your assignment. Not one of toil or fame, but of quiet alignment with God's rhythm. And this rhythm doesn't always make noise, but it always creates impact. To embody your purpose is to live as though every moment is sacred, because it is. It's understanding that even your smallest act of love, your briefest word of kindness, your silent prayer in the middle of the night, all of it sends ripples through creation. You are not just a part of the story. You are carrying the frequency of heaven into places that need it most. Not by force, not by shouting, but by being. This embodiment requires courage, because walking as the chosen means often walking alone, at least at first. It means choosing integrity when compromise is easier. It means standing in light when darkness feels more familiar. But the chosen know they are not truly alone. They are accompanied by grace, fueled by something deeper than motivation, something eternal. Purpose is not something you stumble into by accident. It's revealed as you walk in obedience, step by step, even when the path isn't clear. Even when you feel unqualified, especially then, because God doesn't choose the perfect, He perfects the chosen. So embody your purpose boldly, live your truth fully, become the answer to someone else's prayer. Let your life speak not with noise, but with clarity. Let it echo with compassion, conviction, and quiet power. The chosen don't just anticipate the shift, they are the shift. And when they rise gently, humbly, consistently, the world begins to awaken, not to a new reality, but to the one that's been waiting within it all along.